Vikings 31, Packers 29. Got a little dicey in the second half, didn't it? From style point of view, you might have liked to see the Vikings finish that one off a little bit more cleanly with a little bit less drama. But in the end, a win at Lambeau, an undefeated start to the season. They go to London 4-0. I honestly thought they might go to London 0-4. That's where we are at this point in the season. I thought they might be an 0-4 team going to play Aaron Rodgers in London. Instead, the Vikings are 4-0. They jump out to a 28-0 lead at halftime of this game at Lambeau Field. Sam Darnold was cooking in the first half, 3 touchdowns. Everything was working. Green Bay was killing themselves with mistakes. 2 missed field goals by their rookie kicker. Who's ever seen that at Lambeau Field before? 2 interceptions by Jordan Love, some drop passes, things like that. Everything was going the Vikings' way. Nothing was going the Packers' way until that muff punt right at the end of the first half, right? I was actually kind of catching up to the game at that point. I was out doing some stuff. So I was like, I recorded it, kind of started the game maybe 40 minutes early. So I was kind of like little here and there, kind of catching up to it, stuff like that. And I was kind of like fast forwarding through that part of the end of the second quarter, thinking they're just going to, they're going to take it to halftime 28-0. And all of a sudden I see Green Bay celebrating. And I'm like, what is going on here? I have to go back. You're like, 28-7 at halftime instead of 28-0. Green Bay's getting the ball to start the second half. You're like, okay, is this the start of something? And it kind of was, right? Green Bay gets it all the way back to 28-22 after the Sam Darnold turnover. Sam Darnold threw an interception. Shouldn't have been an interception, by the way. Terrible call. Should have been overturned. Sam Darnold throws an interception, though, while the Vikings are driving, trying to kind of restore order in the second half. Momentum killer at that point. But then he has the fumble, the strip fumble, things like that. You got no, sometimes that's going to happen, right? Like Darnold's going to turn the ball over sometimes. Just didn't feel the blitz for whatever reason. Green Bay recovers. It's 28-22. But at that point, that is where you think, okay, this is where they've got to have a drive. Kind of similar to the San Francisco game earlier this year, right? Where the Vikings were dominating the whole game. Then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, got to have it, got to have something here. And in that moment, in that drive, Darnold was terrific again. Got him a field goal just like he did in that San Francisco game. Cannot overstate how important that was to kind of stem the momentum, make it a 2-score game again, and kind of reverse the things that were going on in that game. Now, other huge things that stood out before I get to some questions and some bigger picture thoughts. Byron Murphy. I think we kind of tend to underrate or forget about Byron Murphy, underappreciate maybe Byron Murphy, who's been very good for them, very solid in the secondary since they signed him, a couple of years back. He was really good. I mean, obviously the interception when Green Bay is, maybe driving to get right back in it with plenty of time left. Harrison Smith blitzes off the edge. You got Byron Murphy back there, makes the interception, pulls it in. They didn't end up scoring off of that drive, but again, it pushes Green Bay back, takes a few minutes off the clock, things like that. Very next drive, Byron Murphy punches the ball out, literally punches the ball out, forces a fumble. Vikings take that. Again, they don't score, but they use enough time off of that drive to really seal the game. So you kind of get the sense that they kind of had that 2-minute offense working, the 4-minute offense working, that the Vikings were able to close out this game when they needed to. Now, stylistically, do we wonder if maybe they could have closed it out a little bit more cleanly? That was the first question I got from Shaq Lacopa. Says, when will a Vikings team go for the kill and not let teams back in the game? ? Tired of this every season. Also, the refs blowing that interception call seemed to be a very big sway in momentum. Yeah, I already talked about that. That call definitely changed momentum. I think the Vikings had gotten maybe the benefit of some of those borderline calls already, the overturns on the completions, incompletions, things like that. One of those at least felt like it was. I was surprised about. I was shocked though that they did not overturn that interception because he did not have control of that ball going out of bounds. He did not fully bring that ball in until he was out of bounds. That was a bad call. So the Vikings lose the benefit of that call. I thought they got the benefits of other calls. But the bigger picture question is, did they play not to lose towards the end, Or was that good strategy? Was it kind of a function of knowing how much clock there is, knowing how much Green Bay has to go down the field, knowing kind of where the game is? I think it's a little bit of both. I also think that Green Bay maybe exposed a few things that the Vikings were doing on defense. I think they found some things in the middle of the field that other teams hadn't found so far this year, that Jordan Love was kind of content. When he was content to throw the ball on those 5 to 10 yard routes instead of throwing it down the field, they had a lot of success. When he got greedy, that's where they got in trouble with the interceptions. Jordan Love threw 3 interceptions. He ended up throwing for a bunch of yards, but those 3 interceptions were killers, as were, like I said, the fumble towards the end of the game. So I think the Vikings did enough. I would have liked them to be a little bit more aggressive on the second and third Packers touchdown. Those felt like they came a little bit easy. Like there was too much game clock left to start playing the long game at that point. That there was a little bit too much to kind of manage at that point, where you didn't want to just be, kind of getting down there and, playing soft, playing a little cover two. No, not let them have too much, kind of hoping they make a mistake. Jordan Love's going to carve you up. Even if Jordan Love is not fully mobile, you need to put some heat on him. You need to put some heat on him in those situations instead of letting him go kind of back and forth. So I feel like that was maybe, it was the middle of the game more than the end of the game that I had an issue with kind of how they managed it. Also, though, the offense was rolling at that point. The offense dried up kind of, early second half. One concern I have right now still is that they can't consistently get a yard on the ground when they want to get a yard on the ground. On one play, they went to a pass play on 3rd and 1 in the second half, didn't get it. Another time they tried to run for it, didn't get it. I think it was Ty Chandler that didn't get it. They tried Jones down at the goal line towards the end. He didn't get it. Try and end around to try to seal the game. Jalen Naylor looked like he had something there, but he kind of lost his footing. It was a little bit short. So the run game has been a lot better. Aaron Jones has been a revelation. He's been terrific. I already called him the best all-around back that I have ever seen watching the Vikings. Now, that's like 35-ish years of really paying attention to Vikings football. So all you Chuck Foreman enthusiasts who emailed me last week saying, what about Chuck Foreman? Yeah, Chuck Foreman was great. I didn't watch Chuck Foreman live. I don't know how great Chuck Foreman was from my own live viewing experience. So Aaron Jones already, not an accomplishment, but just watching him on the field, already the best all-around back that I have seen. That involves pass catching, that involves running, that involves being in the blocking game. He had a huge block on a Justin Jefferson completion towards the end of the game that kind of got the, kind of bought more time, made the Green Bay use those timeouts in that last drive. Even though the Vikings didn't convert that 4th and 1, even though they didn't score on that drive was huge. That made it so that they had to go the length of the field. And even if they did, which they did, not my favorite, but even though they did, you knew at that point that they would have to execute an onside kick, which they did. Now, again, can we quibble about how they finished this out? Could it have been a tidier win? Yeah, it could have been. But not every game is going to be the Texans game where you race out to a huge lead and you keep it the whole game. This was a little bit more in the style of the old Vikings, with the difference being that they did not blow it in the end. They managed to come full circle, maintain the lead all the way through and keep it up just enough. It was comfortable-ish. As long as you were comfortable knowing that they could execute an onside kick, as long as you were comfortable with Sam Darnold throwing in the 4th quarter, which he looked comfortable doing, it was not a game where they were just hanging on by their fingernails. It was a game where they needed to make plays, and they did. And then all it came down to was a high percentage onside kick recovery. Yeah, you might have liked to have it just be a run out the clock kind of game. If they could have made a yard, it would have been more of that vein where they could have just taken 3 knees from the 3 instead of having to recover an onside kick. But still, a pretty comfortable win. And a win is a win. You have now banked a win at Lambeau. You caught Jordan Love at a good time. A little bit rusty in the first half, I think, coming back from that knee injury. And that was where they built up that huge lead. He was much better in the second half, albeit against some of the prevent stuff that maybe we can quibble with, why they're doing that stuff like that. But they still are 4-0 now. They're 2 games up on Green Bay with the win at Lambeau in hand. So it's almost like a 2.5 game lead if you're kind of like factoring in tiebreakers, things like that, because now you get to play Green Bay only one more time, and that's at US Bank Stadium later this year. So 4-0, 2 games up on the Packers after just 4 games. Again, I thought this might be an 0-4, 1-3 team at this point in the season. I had no delusions of grandeur with this team. This team is massively overplaying, but again, giving us some reason to think, okay, how good How good are they? They maybe tempered expectations just a little bit by having to struggle in the second half. Some stuff to put on film, some correctable stuff, easily correctable stuff, as my friend Christian Ponder might say. Some stuff they do need to clean up, so maybe pumping the brakes a little bit. Like if they go out and blow the doors off Green Bay for another half, we are having a different conversation right now. You're still saying, hey, 4-0, but you're talking about, like, what if they finish this game and it's 41-14, something like that, and they just play a second half that's just cruise control. We're having a different conversation right now. So a little different conversation, even with the win, than we would have been having if they had continued to blow the doors off Green Bay. But still, Sam Darnold, you can't argue with the results. You can't argue with the way he's playing right now. You can't argue with the balance, too. And again, some of this is the function of playing with the lead. I got a question on that, and I'll get to that in a minute. Darnold attempts 28 passes, goes 20 of 28, 275, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He was sacked a couple times. Passer rating 123.4. Now, he had the interception. He had the fumble. Got to work on that. But overall, his numbers were great. The Vikings put up, almost 400 yards of offense, gave up almost 500 yards while Green Bay's playing from behind. So, again, some of the defense exposed. They probably got tired towards the end of the game. It got a little bit, one-sided. The field got a little tilted towards the end of the game. The team stats, I think, are going to show some time of possession that was pretty lopsided. Green Bay had the ball for a lot of that game towards the end, at least. Not in the first half, but certainly in the second half, they had a lot of possession time. So Vikings defense probably got a little tired towards the end. But here, this is a good question from my old neighbor T-Gage. Tom says, he said, can the NFL get a pitch clock to speed up these games? That was one of his questions. But the question I really want to get to is the Vikings have been solid getting out to big leads. How will they fare playing from behind? And I think that's the thing we don't know about this team. We know they're much better than we thought they would be, but they've been behind for exactly 3.5 minutes this entire season. I think the Giants scored first in the very first game of the year. I think it was the very first drive where the Vikings, who was it? CJ Ham, I think, fumbled on the first drive. You're thinking, here we go again. Vikings hold them to a field goal on that drive. Then the Vikings take the lead. They have not trailed since that moment in the season. How will they fare if they get down 10-0, 14-0 in a game? That's what we don't know. How will they fare when defenses know that Sam Darnold has to throw rather than being kind of this play action mix where they can go to the run and the pass? That's what we don't know yet. Can Sam Darnold win a game when he has to throw 40 times, when he has to rally them from behind? Or will we see more of these mistakes that he made today come to the forefront? And again, he got away with one early. The very first pass of the day could have been intercepted. He threw it into tight coverage. He was scrambling through it. Should have thrown it away, but instead throws it into tight coverage. Green Bay could have come up with the interception, didn't. Then he has completions in his next 8. 2 of them are touchdowns. So he got into a rhythm. He recovered. The thing I have been really impressed with by him and the Vikings is their resilience, that once things snowball against them, they are able to come back and make the drive they need to make to finish off the game. They did it against San Francisco. They did it again against Green Bay today. They got that drive they needed to stop momentum, to restore the 2-score lead, just like they did against the 49ers a couple weeks ago. And as a result, they're 4-0. Hey, kicker Will Reichert, by the way, still hasn't missed a kick this year. Bunch of extra points. Field goal. Again, it's not a long field goal, but it's a gotta-have-it field goal. It's his first outdoor field goal attempt of the season, as they said on the broadcast. Straight down the middle. We saw a Packers kicker miss all sorts of kicks today. We saw Daniel Carlson in 2018 have an absolute nightmare of a game in his debut at Lambeau Field. Reichert looks like he's the real deal right now. Again, we got to see it for longer than just a few kicks, but he seems like he's been solid. That is all part of kind of the maturation of this team, the complementary football that they seem to be playing. Let's get to a couple other questions. Brian says, no TDs for Rodgers today, if I followed right. So London game, he should go off for sure. I don't know about that. I don't know if we're going to play the Rodgers going off game. We'll see. I don't know if we really go for that right now. I don't know if we really can worry about Aaron Rodgers right now. So I don't know. I think we're kind of in that territory where we're worried more about the Vikings than we are about Aaron Rodgers right now. Let me see if there's any more questions before we end this up. Only Puns CEO said, will you sell your soul in exchange for this team picking up a short yardage conversion running the ball? Exactly. I already addressed that. They can't get a yard when they need a yard. Hey, let's check out that Justin Jefferson catch, though. The one on the sidelines, that was amazing. Let's check that out right now.
The blitz in 5. And on the side, they're going for Jefferson in front of Stokes. And the catch stays out of bounds. Officials had to confer, and then he said he was on the chalk.
Again, just want to say to end this thing up, it could have been one of those weekends, right? Gophers get hosed on the onside kick. Twins eliminated early in just tragic end of their season. Hey, some people saying Karl-Anthony Towns trade was part of the tragic weekend. I don't see it that way. I love the Karl-Anthony Towns trade as much as you might like Karl-Anthony Towns. I think that was a good trade by the Timberwolves. I think you're going to bear that out, that was a good trade for them. But some people might view it the other way. The Twins' terrible finish to the season, things like that. This could have been just another one of those things in a Minnesota sports weekend, but instead it isn't. So again, huge win for the Vikings, 4-0 going into the London game. I never would have predicted that, but here we are.